I know you want to be in the video. You a good boy? You go. You're a good boy. All right, get off of me. Hey everybody, it's Megtooth Sith. Welcome to the 2023 Proffie programming tutorial. Yeah, it's filmed in 2022, but it's so close to the end of 2022, might as well call it 2023. Want to make sure that this thing has some longevity. Been a lot of work going into this video. Got a new computer and had to convert the new computer to program Proffies. Y'all are the beneficiary of my computer woes. There's going to be chapters. There's 4 chapters in this video. I'll try to subdivide it into links and timestamps, and I'll try to work on that after the video gets published. But there are 4 chapters in the video. Just really quick before we begin, you cannot download a config file from a Proffie board. So you just can't take a prop, that's Teensy Saber. You just can't take a Proffie board and plug it into a computer and download the config file off of it. The config file is actually written onto the brain via the Proffie OS. The only way you can get a copy of the config file is if your installer or the company you bought it from, your vendor, put a copy of it on your SD card. Reputable Saber installers and vendors put the config file on the SD card. The config file is going to be unique to how the Proffie board was wired. If you didn't wire that Proffie board, yeah, you're going to have to call the installer to give you the config file. Otherwise, it's going to be quite a bit to figure out. Might be way too advanced for this video. It doesn't matter whether or not you program your Proffie before or after you install it. Typically, I'll do a quick, some sort of, simple config file and upload one font on the SD card so that way once I get the Saber wired and I throw the power to it, I should hear the boot sound and I can make the Saber do its thing. So typically I actually program my Proffies before I install them, but you don't have to. And it doesn't have to be connected to a battery. There's lots of good resources. You've got the Crucible forums, you've got the Facebook groups, open source Proffie support group, TRA, and I'll link all those groups and pages and websites on the doobly-doo information on the bottom of this video if you expand it. So pay close attention, everybody. Your questions are probably going to be answered in this video somewhere along the lines. If they aren't, please feel free to ask me questions, but try to pay attention to the video because most of the questions are probably going to be answered in the video. This video does dive into OS 6 and OS 7 is in alpha testing as this video is being made, but this video should be relevant even if we're on OS 8 because the processes are still going to be relatively the same. And I'll leave you the links to the websites on here. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope this video helps somebody build a lightsaber or to make your lightsaber that you bought even better. If I can do it, you can do it. May the Force be with you.
Unlucky for me, but lucky for you all, my computer died. Because my computer died, I had to get a new computer, so we're now on my new computer. This is Windows 11, and it is not set up for programming Proffie board. I don't have Arduino, I don't have nothing on here. So I'm going to have to install Arduino, the Arduino plugin, I'm going to have to run Zadig, the whole 9 yards. And, I've never done a full walkthrough like this because my computer was already set up, and I never wanted to go and mess around with Zadig or download an Arduino. So let's go and search for the first thing we need to do here, which is Proffie board. So we're going to search for Proffie board and scroll down here and let's go to this Proffie board V2 page here. And once you're on this Proffie board 2.2 page, you can see here, where it says all the things that you need to make the Proffie board run. We're going to go to software page because we need all the software that makes the Proffie board do all the cool stuff. And here's a list of everything we need to get. Arduino, the Proffie board plugin, there's a lot of stuff that we need to get there. And the actual Proffie OS. But we need to download, I guess the first things first, we're going to download Arduino. So I click on the link there, and we're at the Arduino downloading page, and we're going to, the latest version of Arduino is 2.0, but I'm going to download 1.8.19 from Windows, so you can see 1.819 is a previous version. I'm not going to donate this time. We're just going to download the file. So you can see it's downloading up there in the upper right hand corner. You're going to get all kinds of Windows security alerts here. Yada yada. Agree there. Yada yada. Yeah. And in we go. So we're installing Arduino onto the computer. This is 1.8.19. This is the version of Arduino that we're installing, which is the version that I like to use. There's been a bunch of feedback on the Crucible about the 2.0 version of Arduino, so that's why I'm using an older version. But I don't think there's anything really wrong with 2.0. It's just it's a newer version, and I'm wanting to download one I'm familiar with, so I did 1.8.19. I mean, I used a really old version of Arduino for years. Would you like to? Yep. Okay, click here. Yeah, all these security alerts. Brand new computer obviously doesn't like Arduino because of all the code on it, but it looks like our install is finished there. We're out of there. Let's go minimize this window. Let's make sure Arduino is there. And there's our shortcut for Arduino right there. So, our Arduino is done. We'll come back to that later. You never really use that shortcut anyway. But now we need to go back to the proffieboard page. Scroll back down here, and we need to go click on the software page. What's the next thing we need? It looks like the next thing we need is going to be the proffieboard plugin. You got, let's go, yeah. So when you go to the proffieboard plugin page, you've got to scroll down, and then it gives you the instructions for the proffieboard plugin. So when you want to install the proffieboard plugin, you have to go to Preferences in Arduino, and then you put in this web address, this long web address that's right there, the HTTPS address. That has to go in this window in the Preferences tab. You'll see it here in a minute. My last computer wouldn't let me copy and paste. Let's see if this one will let me copy and paste this address into Arduino, because typing it's a pain, but I've had to manually type this address in to every computer I've set up. So I'm hoping Windows 11 maybe will let me type in, cut and paste in Arduino. Ooh, Windows does not like Windows does not like Arduino. I'm given all kinds of security alerts there. All right, so now we've got Arduino open, and I got to find this preferences. I can't remember. It's edit. I don't think it's there. Not in tools. File. Oh, there it is. Preferences. Click on Preferences in the File tab, down to Preferences, and you see down here in bottom this other URLs, board managers, other URLs. That's where we're going to be entering that address that we had on the instructions for the Proffie plugin. Basically, this plugin is just it's a tool that helps Arduino communicate with the Proffie board. So it's a modification of Arduino so that it can communicate with Proffie board. That's all the plugin is. But you've got to have this plugin, or you cannot program Proffie boards. And this plugin allows you to program Proffie board 1, 2, and 3. Now you see I'm having to type this manually. This is a pain in the ass. Wouldn't let me copy and paste, so trying to put these windows together. Every time I click in this window, the thing goes away, so I'm going to have to do it from memory. Yada yada. Yep. Yep. What's the rest of it here? Is that looking right? Index.json, index.json. All right. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Yep. Sorry. Having to manually type all this in, it's a pain in the butt. But I'm double checking here. I think everything's okay. Okay. So now we're going to close out of this preferences tab. We put in our address down there. Now we're going to go install the plugin now that we've got the address. So now that we've got the address, it basically tells Arduino where it needs to go so we can download this thing. So let's go to the Tools tab. We're going to come down to Boards in Tools. You go down to Boards. Boards, and then you slide over straight over to the top. That list is Boards Manager, and we're going to click on that. And then if we scroll down to the bottom of this, we'll see, proffieboard, Frederick Cuban A, something like that. And there you see it. Frederick Cuban A, proffieboard plugin. This one, whatever version this is. This is the latest version. This is one you need to work with OS 6. And it's installing. And you can see the progress bar down on the bottom. The progress bar down on the bottom lets us know that it's definitely installing the proffieboard plugin. So, we're definitely cooking with oil here. We're doing pretty good. This plugin does take some time to download, but just be patient with it. All right, it's installed. There it is. Bada bing, bada boom. Our proffieboard plugin is installed, and it's just that easy. We just had to add that web address for the plugin in the Preferences tab under File, Preferences, and other boards, managers, URLs, and here we are. So we've done that URL. So now what do we need? Well, let's see. Next is we've installed the plugin. Next is Teensy Now I need Teensy because I still program Teensy stuff. I still have 2 lightsabers running, Teensy Saber, and I do other stuff in Teensy, but I'm not going to mess around with Teensy tonight. I'm going to leave that alone. If you're not installing Teensy Sabers, you don't need Teensy anymore. And I guess we're to the point where we'll talk about sounds and the sound packs in another video. But let's go ahead and now it's time to download the main OS. You always hear Fernando talking about OS 7 or OS 6. Well, here it is, where it says download version 6.7 here. This is the latest version of the Proffie OS that's available to the public and is safe. Now there's later versions than this, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. But you can certainly download the safe tested version here, and there it is, and it's a Proffie OS folder, just like that. So I'm extracting it to the desktop here, and let's close out this window, and there you go. Now I'm going to come over here, I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm trying to figure out this new computer. Everything's changed on Windows 11. New folder, there we go. And I'm going to call this folder 6.7 because that's the version of the OS it is. I'm going to move it up here. I'm going to come over here and grab our OS that we just downloaded and put it in the 6.7 folder. That's where I want it. Right in this 6.7 folder. This is just how I do it. You don't have to do this. Bada bing, it's on my desktop. We're good to go. We're solid there. So now we have OS 6.7 on our desktop. Let's go ahead and open this. You have all your folders in there, and then you have the Proffie os.eno, and that is basically that opens Arduino, but with the Proffie OS sketch already in it. Oop, I had it. There we go. I was zooming in and out there. Still figuring out this computer, y'all. But now Arduino is open from within the Proffie OS folder, but this is OS 6.7 that's opened up. When you open your Proffie OS folder and you see that Proffie os.eno, let's plug in. We're going to plug in a Proffie board here, and we're going to see if it sees it. Hey, look at there, Com3 Proffie board. It sees it, so it saw the Proffie board in the port. That's pretty awesome. So all that works. That's cool because on Windows 10 you couldn't see the Proffie board until you installed until you ran Zadig. But on Windows 11 you can see the Proffie board. It's right there. It's pretty cool. That's awesome. That's slick. So at least that's a little bit of help. All right, closing out of that. The next step's going to be we're going to have to talk about Zadig. Zadig is that one thing that's a pain in the butt. The one thing I will say about Zadig is that Zadig is a once and done thing, or Zadig, however you say it. Once you run Zadig and you put the proper drivers on your computer, that's it. You never have to do it again. If you run Zadig again, you'll mess up your drivers. You'll have the wrong drivers on, and then you have to watch Frederick's video, which is linked down at the bottom of this page to fix it. So to get back to the instructions for Zadig, you have to go back to the proffieboard plugin, and below the directions for proffieboard plugin that we've already looked at, which you see that web address we put in preferences. Then you see OS specific setup. You got Linux, and then you got Windows, and here you go. You got to download Zadig. You got to plug in your proffieboard, and you're gonna toggle the reset button while you're holding the boot button down. You're going to let Windows look for drivers. Then you're going to open Zadig, and then you're going to change the driver to this driver specified here. So that's what we're going to do because we obviously need a new driver. To prove that we need the new driver, I'm going to try, like I've got a sketch already, ready to go here. And I got my Proffie board plugged in, my port is selected, and I'm going to try and so right now I'm just compiling this sketch to make sure it's going to be clear because I just popped it in the I just popped this in the folder. Now look, I'll have another video showing you guys how to program Proffie and how to write a config file. Okay, so there you go. The config works. So now let's go ahead and let's make sure we got the port selected, and let's go ahead and program. So okay, there's the port, Com3 Proffie board. All right, let's upload. So let's upload this to the Proffie board. Now, this is probably not going to work because we haven't run Zadig yet, or Zadig. So, it's compiling right now. It's compiling the sketch, and, let's see. Oh, yeah. Cannot open DFU device, and you get that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is not a valid program, y'all. So the computer and Arduino still cannot communicate with the Proffie board because we don't have the proper drivers. So we're going to have to go and run Zadig or Zadig. Still messing around here. So the port's grayed out. I unplugged my Proffie board and plugged it back in. That's the beeping you hear. Now I'm going to close out of that. Oh, yep, up there it pops up again. So Just had to refresh it by unplugging it and plugging it back in. But we've got to run Zadig. So my Proffie board's plugged in to the computer. We're going to follow the directions here on what to do with Zadig. So I'm going to go back to our, Proffie board page. And let's go get the instructions for Zadig. So we go to our Proffie board page and scroll down. We click on the link for software. And then we click on the link for Proffie board plugin. Here, click. And then we scroll down below all that, build a carb, and you get, okay, here we get to the Zadig and the bootloader mess. This is what we got to do. This is the next step of the instructions we're on. So we got to download Zadig. I've already done that. And it's shortcuts on my desktop. We got to plug our Proffie board into the computer, and we're going to toggle reset while we're holding down boot. And we're going to do that in a minute. But let me pull up the 1.5 website, because actually I got a Proffie board 1.5 plugged in. That's the schematics on a 1.5. I don't need that. I need the actual board diagram. So I don't remember which one's boot, which one's reset. Yep, click back. All right. Proffie board 1.5. All right, so one on the left is boot, one on the right is reset. So there you go. So what does it say we need to do? It says we need to plug it in and toggle reset while holding down boot. So we're going to hold down the button on the left while we push the button on the right while it's plugged into the computer. And what that's going to do is that's going to put the Proffie board into bootloader mode, and that's what we want. Once the Proffie's in bootloader mode, then Zadig can find the right driver for us. So that's basically what we're doing here. So let's do this. Let's hold down boot and press reset. See if you hear. Yep. Up. So there you hear the computer beeping. So it recognized that it's in bootloader mode. And Proffie board is in bootloader mode. And now we're going to open up Zadig. And we're going to do this whole thing with Zadig. And the computer's probably going to give me security warnings on Zadig, but ooh. All right, so there you see we got STM bootloader is already showing up in the devices. And I think this is the right driver that already shows up for it. Let's just check the numbers here. Blah, 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 blah. There it is. That's the driver number. Blah, 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 blah. Let's double check and make sure it's the same. Yep, same numbers. All good. So then we want to click, I guess we're going to install this driver. It's a little bit different than what Frederick wrote there on what I'm seeing here, but I'm pretty sure we just install this driver. Install now. Yep. Here we go. Scary. Bada bing. Now listen, once you do this with Zadig one time with your computer, you should never have to do this again, unless you mess up the drivers. But Zadig is a once and done thing. This isn't every time you program your Proffie board. We're setting up a computer that was not set up for program Proffie boards. And we're having to run Zadig this one time. Now, after I run Zadig, all I do is plug my Proffie board in and program it. I don't have to run Zadig anymore. I just open Proffie OS Eno from within whatever OS I'm programming on. 6.7 is what we downloaded tonight. And then I'm uploading. So don't do Zadig more than once. Only do Zadig once. If you do it more than once, you got the wrong driver on your computer. And then you got to go watch Frederick's video. Fix your computer. Okay. So There we go. Plug back in. Now let's see if I can see my port in Arduino, and I can. There it is, COM3 Proffie board. I'm going to select that port. Let's go ahead and upload. So it's the same config we already compiled earlier, and you can see that it's rolling. Keep those puppies rolling, right. And let's see what kind of a message we get once it starts. Oh, bam. That's how we're supposed to look when we're compiling down here at the bottom. Try scroll. Ah, dang it. So down here at the bottom is the progress bar, those equal signs. You see them growing, and the number here is growing in percentages. That's how we know that the program is successful and that Arduino is successfully communicating with our Proffie board because we did the right driver with Zadig. So we're in business. Now look, I'll have another video on how to program your Proffie board. I'm just testing it to show you guys what a successful install looks like. You know, when you're programming a Proffie board, you should see this, you know, the bar ticking up percentages at the bottom of the screen. You know, you shouldn't see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you see that, it's not right. You know, it's done. So it's totally done, uploading 100%. You know, that's awesome. And all these other messages are totally normal after, you know, you uploaded your Proffie board. So basically, let's go look at it in the serial monitor. And yep, if I wave the Proffie board around a little bit, I mean, there's no SD card in this thing, so there's no sounds. And I don't think there's any gesture controls on this, but I'm just waving it around. That's what you're seeing. So, you know, obviously the Proffie board's working. So that's pretty cool. So that's done. Awesome sauce. Our computer's set up and ready to program Proffie boards. Now, let's show you the video on YouTube. If you search, let's see, Proffie board, Hubbe, Hubbe, and then scroll down. Oh, see that dude on the airplane thing? Proffie board, Zadig, and ports walkthrough. That's Frederick's video that you need to watch. Click. I'll put the link to this video in the description so you guys can watch it. But if you guys screw up Zadig, or if you've run Zadig more than once, or you don't have the right driver, you keep getting a countdown on there, you can post your problem in the Crucible, but the best thing to do first is watch this video and see if you can fix your computer. It's a good video by Frederick. So I hope that helps a bunch of you, and you know, it's bad for me, but good for y'all. My computer died, but I got a new computer and got the video this set up on a new computer.
Greetings, Saber fans. It's your old pal Megtooth Sith, and here we are again to talk about programming your Proffie board. Let's Google search Proffie board, and you know, all these Chinese sabers pop up. But anyway, we want to go to the actual Proffie board website. You know, frederichubbe.net. Frederick Hubbe, Hubbe. That's what you need to be looking for. This is the actual Proffie board website, and you know, the cool thing about the Proffie board website is y'all have seen before, you know, previously we talked about installing the software in your computer that you need. Well, now let's talk about, now that we've installed the software, we need to talk about the config file. But before I talk about the config file, I want to talk about something else. I see a lot of people that have, you know, these Chinese sabers. They get on the internet and they say, hey, I need a config file for my Proffie board. But the problem with that is you have to know the way it was wired. Because the pads that the Proffie board is wired to, like you can see in this wiring diagram, how the main blade is wired to, these are actually LEDs 2 and 3. It's important to know that the main blade is wired to FETs 2 and 3, and that there are 2 buttons on this lightsaber. Because in the config file I'm getting ready to show you all created, you can see here's the define for the main blade, which this is very advanced for you guys, but you can see it's hooked on the blade power pins 2 and 3. And it does have 2 buttons in it. It's which one's power and which one's auxiliary. So you can't just make a generic config file for a Proffie board. How the Proffie board is wired will dictate a lot of what's in the config. So the important thing for you is to demand that your your vendors that are selling you these cheap lightsabers supply the config file that the lightsaber was programmed with, include that on the SD card so that you can modify the blade styles. That's ideal. If not, you're going to have to see how your Proffie board is wired, and then you're going to have to look at it and figure it out on your own. But at any rate, for those that are installing your own sabers, the good news for you is you can start from scratch. So again, we're on the Proffie board page, and I'm going to scroll down below the pin maps here. And here's all your options. Let's say I want to build a neopixel lightsaber, and I want it to have a neopixel crystal chamber. So this LED over here represents your crystal chamber. I'm glad to see further changed that you only need one FET for that. That's awesome. And main blade is 104 LEDs, just not RGBW. It's just normal neopixel RGB. And crystal chamber has one neopixel. We have 2 buttons, and let's say you wanted to add a kill switch to this thing. We're going to include that kill switch. And there we go. So those are the options that we know we're going to install. This represents your crystal chamber. This represents your main blade. There's your kill switch, button 1, button 2, recharge port, speaker. Well, what if I don't want a recharge port? Well, if you don't want a recharge port, then take this the positive line here and just connect it. I'm sorry, the negative line here, and just connect it to your to all your negatives. Write the recharge port out of it. Take the positive line here and just connect it to the just imagine this wire doesn't go up to the recharge port. Just imagine this wire goes to the battery negative instead of to the recharge port. It's that simple. That's how you take the recharge port out of a circuit. You just have to understand how it's wired. But the bonus is once you do all this up here in the configurator and say which components you're trying to build, the website creates your config for you. So here's our config. And now we're going to open all this. And I'm going to right click, copy all of this stuff, which is now our new config file. You can see, I'll show you something else down here on the bottom, but let's get this pasted in. I'm going to paste it into WordPad. C++ is most ideal. I'm just used to working with WordPad, so that's what I use. And I'm going to clean some of this up so it's in a format that I like. You don't have to do any of this. Okay, so now it's in a format that I like. So this is our config file that we've just created. There's a program called C++, which is better, but I use WordPad like I said. This is our config file, and the config file basically has 3 sections. The first section, and I'm going to say it's actually 4 now. The first section is called the config top, and if you can even say, it defines up there config top. And then you have all these defines, blah, 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 blah. The second part, which we haven't added in yet, is which prop file we're going to use, which is blank right here. So right now it's just going to use the default prop file by Frederick, but I'm not going to use that. And if you want edit mode and all those fancy things from Fernando, you're going to have to use Fernando's prop file. I'm going to show you how to define that here in a minute. Then the next part of your config file are going to be all your presets. So all these are your presets. And if you remember, we said, hey, this is a 2-bladed lightsaber. So I'm going to separate out these presets into what they are.
the preset starts with which font it's going to use. This first preset here is going to use font Teens ESF, and then it's going to use tracks, and then it's going to look for a track on your tracks folder on your SD card called Venus Wave. Now, there's a lot of stuff we have to do here for OS 6.7, and I'll show some of that along the way, but I do have a whole video on how to upgrade for OS 6.7. And you should watch that video. But I guess we'll make this one OS 6.7 compliant. But I wanted you all to see how these presets are written. So you have the actual font it's going to use and the track that it's going to use. And then remember, we have two blades on our lightsaber. The first blade is our main blade, and the second blade style, these are blade styles, by the way. And the second blade style is our crystal chamber. We're going to be changing all these with Fernando's website. We're going to be changing a lot of this stuff. So I'm just right now trying to get everything separated out. All these presets separated out. So you can see, so like I'm putting a space between all the presets so you can see where they end. So basically you have the font, the track, two blade styles, and then there's a quote and an end bracket. Now what's in these quote, I'll talk about that here in a bit. When we finish talking about these presets. But what's in those quotes is actually what displays in the OLED display, if you have an OLED display. But now, with the Proffie OS Workbench, what displays in these quotes is also what displays on the Proffie OS Workbench. So it's important that when you're naming these presets, that you name them something you're going to recognize on the workbench, so you know what preset you're editing. So that's basically all your presets. So the preset again consists of the font name on your SD card, and your SD card font has to match what's typed here, and then the tracks Venus Wave. Now we're going to modify all this for OS 6.7, but I'm just trying to teach you the basics of the config file. Then down at the bottom we have our blade defines. You'll hear them say blade defines. I'm going to say something up here really quick. Up here at the top, where it says construct unsigned max LEDs per strip 144, that's 144 per meter. Leave that set. That's not the length of your blade. Do not change this unless you've got an RGBW strip, and that's more advanced. You need to refer to the forums if you've got RGBW. But for normal neopixel blades, always leave that top number at 144. Now, at the bottom in our blade config, we have our first blade, which is our main blade, and you can see it's 144 pixels. Now this 144 is actually the length of your blade. So if your blade is 120, 130, 140, whatever it is, you can type it here. But because of the way OS 6.7 works, no matter how long your blade is, I would probably leave it at 140, because you can adjust a blade anywhere from 4 pixels to 140 pixels. So I would leave it there, because you can adjust the blade length in Proffie Workbench. But this is our first NeoPixel blade, so it's blade number 1. It is NeoPixel. It has 140 pixels in it. It gets its data from blade pin, which is data 1. The color order is GRB, which is the color order on most pixel strips, and it uses blade power pins 2 and 3, which is what I talked about. This is blade 1, and how you have this saber wired is important, because if you called for blade power pins, 1 powers the main blade, it wouldn't work. Or if blade power pin 4 and 5 power your main blade, this lightsaber is not going to work with this config. But the way, if you wire it to power pins 2 and 3 for your negative on the NeoPixel strip, and your data to blade to data 1, which is blade pin, then it's going to work just fine. This is your second blade. It is NeoPixel. It has 1 pixel. This is the crystal chamber. It uses blade 4-pin, and you can see your second blade is 1 pixel on blade 4-pin. That's where the workbench put it, but I'm actually going to put it on data 2. And it runs on power pin 6, which we could do that, but I'm going to put it on power pin 1. That's going to be LED 1. So the blade power pins are your LED pads. LED pad 1 and blade power pin 2 is LED pad 2, blade power pin 3 is LED pad 3. So that's why it's important to make your config file match how your saber's wired, because how your blades are wired is really the most important part. Now at the very bottom we also have our button configs. So button power is on the power button pin, and it's called the power, and the button aux is on the aux pin. Now you can swap the pins, aux pin and power, like if you start up your saber and the buttons are reversed from how you want it, you can just reverse the pins. So you can make the power button on the aux pin, the aux button on the power pin, and then that'll reverse your buttons. But then you have to reflash the saber with your new config. But that's the basics of making a config. Now what we're going to get into is we're going to be making this config for OS 6.7.
So we talked about making a config, a general one. Now we're going to talk about advancing your config and making it, more up to date. So I'm going to Google FET263, and we're going to go to FET263's lightsaber resources. You can see here in this section, he's got his OS 6 style library, updating your Proffie board, introduction and documentation on Proffie OS 6, his prop file, and we're going to discuss that here in a minute. Edit mode and how that works. The Crucible, a link to the forums that we post a lot of our issues on. The Proffie board operating manual, he has that right there. FET263's YouTube channel about Proffie board. And then the Proffie OS wiki is good for a lot of questions that people have. And open source saber group. So I'm going to open this Proffie board wiki so we have that going. And I'm going to be referring to this a little bit. But you can see over here in the Proffie board wiki, he talks about, your config top. And, we talked about the config top earlier in this video. And he talks about what needs to be in the config top and what all these defines mean that are in the config top that I told you. So you can go and read about all this stuff on your own on the Proffie wiki if you want to get really in depth. How the prop files work, how the presets work, and your buttons. It's really not that bad. How to configure your blades, how to your button actions, your LED configurations, all that stuff is on here on the Proffie wiki. The main thing we're going to be using is the OS 6 style library. Now, if you don't know anything about OS 6, there's a place to get instructions for it where Fernando tells you everything you need. Now, I have a whole nother video on the Proffie OS 6 and upgrading your lightsaber to Proffie OS 6. And, this is going to be an overview video. For a more extensive video on OS 6, I'd ask for you to go to that page to learn how OS 6 works. And I'll link that video in the doobly-doo down below. In the expanded information about this video will be a link to my upgrading your Proffie board OS 6.7 video. So I want to go to the style library because we're definitely going to need that. And there we have Fernando's style library where you have all the cool styles with all the options that Fernando has published. You've seen all the videos he's published. It's insane. So now the config we were working on earlier was this one. And it's just the basic config that's generated by the configurator. And that's how all my lightsaber configs start. And then I make them more complex. But let's open up one that's a little bit more complex. Don't say that one. And we're going to open up one that I'm actually working on, which is APOL MHS. So we might as well get some work done. So this is a config for a Proffie board B2.2 on a lightsaber that has 3 blades. It has 2 buttons. Volume is going to be at 2200.
That's at 144 because we're using RGB neopixels. Clash threshold is at 3.8. For those of you old Proffie users, 2.0, 1.5 was working. Proffie OS 6, you're going to have to go up on that clash threshold. You've got enable audio, motion, WS2811, which is another more than NeoPixel stuff. Enable your SD. And then now we get into the stuff that's starting with OS 6 edit mode. So the first define FET263 edit mode menu, define enable all edit options, and then FET263 dual mode sound, and then FET263 clash strength sound, FET263 mash clash 16. That can be different numbers. You're going to have to read on FET site to determine what those are. Define FET say battery volts. Define FET263 twist off. Define FET263 twist on. Define FET263 twist on no battle mode. That means when you twist on the saber, it doesn't go on a battle mode. And define FET263 thrust on. Define FET263 swing on. Define FET263 swing on speed 350. Define FET263 hold button off and hold button lockup. Now those two defines make the Proffie board act more like Plecker Labs boards. Those are from Matt McGurry. Then you have FET263 say color list, say color list on color change, FET263 say battery volts, and then of course I have motion timeout, which turns off the motion engine on the Proffie board after about 5 minutes. 6 times, 15 times, I don't know, it's about 5 minutes. And then idle off time, which turns off the LEDs. It turns off all the LED pads after about 5 minutes, and that's to save electricity. And then define save state and disable diagnostic commands and disable basic parser styles indep. So, on the simple config that we were working on initially, this config top is a lot bigger. So it goes from there to there, where our other one wasn't quite as complex. And that's because this is a more complex config file. We're getting ready to go to S6. Again, you want to learn more about those defines that you're going to have to include in there, because you're going to have the same defines I have, but your saber's going to act like I want it to act. If you want to act like you want it to act, then you need to go and read which defines you need to put in. Those are mine. That's how I like my sabers behaving, and that's what I use. Now, after the config top, we are inserting a prop file definition. Now, this prop file definition points to how we want our buttons to work and whose prop file we're going to use. Now, because I want OS 6.7 with edit mode, I'm going to use Fernando's FET263 button files. So how we define the prop file, which prop file is used, is we go number sign if def config prop, number sign include, quote, period, / props / saber underscore FET263 underscore buttons.h, end quote, end diff. That's us defining the prop file. Let's go look for this. It's in the props folder, okay? Let's look for it. So if we open our OS 6.7 that we downloaded from chapter 1, and you open the Proffie OS, and you have all of your folders in here, we have a folder called props. And if we open our folder called props, you can see saber underscore FET263 underscore buttons.h. And you can see it's 173 kilobytes. It's the biggest prop file in there. It's because Fernando's prop file is humongous. And if you actually open it, here's all the code that Fernando wrote to make the lightsabers do all the cool stuff that they're doing. And on top of that, the instructions for how to use his config file are the first 3 pages or so. So you can see this is instructions for 2 and 3 button controls. This is how all that works. So if you don't know how to use the buttons, it's always it's usually in the very beginning of the prop file that you're using. But you don't need to know the code in the prop file, but it is handy to know that's where it is. You go into props folder and go into the one you're using, and you can read the directions for the buttons. That's where the directions come from. So let's get back out of that, and let's go back into this config that we're working on. So this is where we define that we're using Fernando's prop file right here. Now, presets, and I'm going to come here and start with the first preset, and I'm going to go off just what we did there. you can see the how it's called for down below the font. And I'm actually working on a real customer's lightsaber here. So he wants Luke ESB Graphics by Kyberphonic. So I'm going to call this ESB. And we also need, oops, I didn't mean to do caps lock. We also need that to be the common folder. And if you look below it, you can see I'm just cloning what's down below. And then we go quotation, common, tracks, esb.wave, and then comma. And then now we need our blade style for our first blade. And that's where we're going to go to Fernando's website. So I'm going to go to Fernando's website, and this is Empire Strikes Back. So I know I want a rotoscope, and I want a rotoscope original trilogy. I'm not going to get any other alternatives there. That's all I need is the original trilogy rotoscope. Sorry, y'all, this new computer, I'm still not quite used to it yet. Okay. Rotoscope. There we go. And I want a main blade for this rotoscope. And let's see. On ESB, Luke Skywalker's lightsaber was not red, so I'm going to change the base color here. It was, I'm going to say Dodger blue, or deep sky blue, or cyan, but I think it was more Dodger blue. That's the base style. So there we go. Now we got to customize the blade, so we got to come here. We're scrolling down. Preon effects. I'm going to go default is disable it because I don't want preons. But if Andy wants to, he can make it faulty ignition preon color, overload preon color, or sparking preon color. Preon color is white. I'm going to leave it at that. So he can do several preons if he wants in edit mode on this blade style, but his default blade style won't have any preons on it. We're going to do for the first ignition, we're always going to do spark tip because that's my gig. Spark tip, I love it. Second, we'll do standard. Third, we'll do gravity. Ignition time, I'm always shooting for 500. Seems to be a relatively good mix. Power up option, none. Retraction effect options. I just like standard retraction. I don't add effects. I'm not going to add any options. No cooldown. I don't want any of that stuff. Trying to keep this one as accurate as possible. Post off. Don't want any of that. Real clash. Now I'm going to use original trilogy, which is lemon chiffon. Original trilogy lemon chiffon for lockup. Lightning block effect, lemon chiffon. Drag effect is lemon chiffon. Melt effect, stab effect, blast effect, lemon chiffon. And I'm just going to leave it blast wave random. I'm not going to get too complicated, y'all. Some people like to go berserk with all this stuff Fernando offers, but to me, you know, most of that stuff, I don't want it on my blade. So now I'm going to say get style code. And of course, you can agree. Now I'm a Patreon of Fernando, so I already donate every month to Fernando to use these blade styles, and you know, y'all should be a Patreon and donate to Fernando if you're using his blade styles because he put in a lot of work putting all this together, and you know, it's nice to pay it forward to him. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste that style that we just got into our config that we wrote. So now I have a font ESB and a common folder, and I have a track ESB wave, which I don't even know what that's going to be yet, but you know, it might be in credits or something like that. And now I have one blade. Now, if you'll remember at the very beginning, we defined that this saber has 3 blades. So let's go down and take a look at that because I'm going to do something special here. we do have 3 blades, and I'm going to separate them out with a space so you guys can see the difference in the 3 blades. So I'm down at the config bottom, I'm down in the blade defines. So I scrolled all the way to the bottom of the config file, and here's where the blades are defined. So here's our first blade. This is blade number 1. And blade number 1 is, you know, and we're right there, folks. Blade number 1 is a neopixel blade with a maximum of 140 neopixels on it. It's powered by data 1, which is blade pin. I'm sorry, that's the data. It gets it from blade pin, which is data 1. Color order is GRB, and it gets its negative from blades power pin 2 and 3 because it's hooked to LED 2 and 3. That's why you always see me solder together LEDs 2 and 3 when I'm installing a saber, because that's where the directions tell you to do it. Next, this is a little bit different. This is a simple blade Peter. This is a Cree XPE2 white template. 550 is the ohms resistor that's listed on there, but that's not important. It's a normal LED, normal LED, normal LED on color order. Blade power pin is 5, and I don't know what all these numbers are. It doesn't matter. And here we've got another normal LED template. It's the same thing as above. Now the bottom line is these are not white LEDs. One is green, which is the second blade. This blade is a green LED that's outside. That's a normal LED outside the hilt, and this one's a red LED. And they're basically designed to mimic the control box on Luke's hero. So I got these blade styles, and I'll show you where I got them from, because you all can get these too. And I'll show you how all these resources work. I'll show you some of these blade styles right here. So here's the 2 blade styles right here. And these are just sequences for a normal LED that they'll sequence. And they work really, really awesome. And I'll show you where I got them. So let's go to, we'll go to Facebook, and then we'll go search Facebook. Actually, I don't even need to search. Let's go to Open Source Sabers. And if you're not a member of Open Source Sabers, you need to be. Open Source Sabers is awesome. It's a good resource. It's a good group if you're trying to learn about Proffie. And then let's go to Files. And then over on Files, there is a config by Jeff Birch on September 25th, 2021. This PP Hero config.h. You can see that he's got a green accent and a red accent LED for the hero control box. And you know, you can download his actual whole config file, which I did, which I'll show you. So we're going to go to this folder for this lightsaber that we're working on and see that PP Hero config file. So I'm just showing you where I got these blade styles from. I'm showing you how easy all this stuff is. Right here. This is where I got them from. And they're from Jeff Birch. So Birch lives on in this saber. But there you go. So there's the 2 blade styles, and they have a blink sequence. And the cool news for us is I'm going to repeat these on every preset. So we only need a main blade, and then we have these 2 styles. So basically, to show you all what I'm doing, I'm going to just copy these blade styles from Jeff Birch's config file that I downloaded off Open Source Sabers group, and copying them. And then I'm going to close out of that. And then I'm going to open back our config file that we're working on. And if you'll recall, we were on ESB. So here we are, ESB, and this was our ESB blade that we did. And at the end of the ESB blade, we didn't have another blade. So we've only defined 1 blade in this first preset, and that's the main blade. Now we need to define these other 2 blades, which are the red and green LEDs. And I'm going to paste that in there. This config is a little bit more complex. And then I'm going to call this ESB, and then I'm going to end this preset just like that. And I need a comma. I had to go check the syntax on the other one. ESB, comma. Now we're ready for another one. So let's start another preset. End quotation. Let's look at what Andy wants. He wants K-Sith ROTJ Luke as his next. I call that font Luke Jedi. Luke Jedi, and then we're going to need common because we're in OS 6, and then common tracks Java wave because I already know what that wave is called on that font. It is Java. And then now we're going to go back to Fernando's site, but Fernando's site, you know, before we had made this blade with blue as the base color, and now we need to change it. So we're going to scroll back up and change the base color because we had it as Dodger blue, and Luke in Return of the Jedi, you know, it's not Dodger blue, it is green. So now if we'll scroll up, you'll see that, you know, our blade is green. And also in Return of the Jedi, the colors were a little bit different. You know, if you want to get really Nazi about screen accurate, I'm going to leave all that stuff the same, but colors on the effects like clash and lockup, yeah, we're going to leave it all original trilogy, I guess. Lemon chiffon, we'll leave all that the same. So basically that blade's ready to go. So I'm going to get the style code, and this is a green blade. Okay. And then we're going to come in after we've, you know, this is the font we're using for the second preset, Luke Jedi, which is K-Sith ROTJ Skywalker. And now we need our main blade. This is going to be our main lightsaber blade. Paste, and then enter, enter. And then I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and I'm going to grab these two blade styles, which are our blinkies for our red and green, and I'm going to copy those. I may make them do some different things in some Sithy presets that we're going to do later. But for right now, I'm just gonna use the control box ones. You know, but when we get down to some like Sithy fonts, then I'll probably change it. Now I need to label this one. I'm going to call this one ROTJ. That's the end of this preset, comma, next preset. Blam, quote. Which one does he want next? This is going to be number 3, which is K-Sith Rogue One Vader. I just call that font Vader. And then, you know, we need common folder, comma, space, quote, common tracks, all wave, because I already know what goes with Rogue One Vader. It's the all wave. And then we're going to come back down to this blade that we already made. And of course, now it's not a green blade that we're wanting. You know, this one was green. We don't want green. We want red. So I'm going to change this to red. And scroll up, and you can see we're dealing with a red blade. And then all the other stuff should be the same. So I'm going to go get style code. Okay. And then we're going to open up our preset under Vader Rogue One, and we're going to paste that style code in there. That's our first blade. Now, I'm going to end this there because I want to give a minute. I'm going to break up this scene a little bit, but we're going to come back and we're actually going to go and create sequences for these normal LEDs on Fernando's website. Right. Now we're entering a realm that I've never done before. We're going to make our own sequence for a normal LED. And Fernando's even put a tool in here for build your own sequence. So we're going to build a sequence for a normal LED. Now remember, all we're doing with this sequence is making it flash. Uh-oh. Why isn't that working? Oh. Build a sequence. Well, let's do this again. Maybe I screwed something up here. 263. OS6 style library. Okay, So we're going to do something that I've never done before. We're going to build a sequence for a normal LED. We just want the LED to flash. So I'm going to come down here to build a sequence. And I have never done this before. So I'm totally new to this. We'll be figuring it out together. This is going to be like a single, we'll call it a single accent pixel, but it's not even really going to be a pixel. And, you know, its base color is white. That's what I've called for in the config. I've said it's a white LED, even though it's not, it's a red. But we're just talking about what it's going to get. Alt color is going to be white. We want it to always stay white. Stab color, you know, we'll say blue. That way it just loses voltage when it gets, you know, stabbed or whatever. You'll see it drop in voltage because it's not going to deliver as many volts. I don't know. I'm guessing. So let's go sequence number 1. Let's go. Is there a blinking? We're going to go blinking on off. Base color, as of course, is going to be white. And we want it to run for, let's say, 100,000 milliseconds. It is looped. We want to fade, and we'll fade. Why don't we go 1,000 milliseconds, and we'll see, you know, if that gives us some time for the other one to run. And you can see it's looped. And what else do we need to select? Oh, I want it to be on when it's on. I'm sorry. We don't want it to be blinking when it's on. We want it to be a solid color, white, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we don't want it to be blinking when we're on. I forgot, we're defining on behavior. So what do you want this LED doing when the saber's on? We want it to be a solid color. We don't want it to be blinking. Now when it's off, we want it to blink. So we want it to blink on and off. White, off color is white. We're going to run this for 100,000 milliseconds. And remember I said we're going to do this one at what, 10, 1, 2, 3, 10,000 milliseconds. And blah, blah, blah. Let's see how we're doing down here. Instant ignition, power up option, blah, 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 retraction, cooldown clash. We'll go flash on clash to red. It's not going to change colors. I just know what it's going to do here. We'll go full blade lockup. We'll go red. Red's just going to reduce the voltage going to the LED, so it'll dim when we're in lockup. It'll dim when we're in lightning block too, if I just make it red. I don't want it to be cyan, I want red. That's going to send less voltage to it. Blast effect. Still getting used to this computer, y'all. We'll go sequence. We'll go red. And force effects, none of the above. Rain, none, blah, blah, blah. No power save. Battery level, doesn't matter. Let's get the style code. I agree. All right, this is the first one we're going to use. So remember, it was, let's see what it does. I didn't even show y'all what it did. So let's scroll up. So there you can see it's off. That's blinking. Now let's turn it on. And then when we clash, it gets red, but it's really just going to get reduced voltage. Blast. And then lock up. You can see it's going to have screwy voltage going to it. And same with lightning block. It'll do the same thing. But it's just a normal LED. And then when we power off the saber, it goes back to blinking. So We have written a sequence. I don't even know what it's going to look like. How long is this blade style going to be? Who knows? Let's minimize this. Let's open our config file back up. And we're going to paste this brand new blade style here. It's not really that complicated. You can see it's FET263 build a sequence. It's a crystal accent PCB on OS 6. And it's blinking on off. It's going to be awesome. So there's our first LED. Now let's do something with our second. Let's go back into Fernando's build a sequence, and we're going to build a second sequence. Now in our second sequence, I want it on behavior to be looped, base color white, white, white. We're going to do all this, but instead of it being a solid color, I want it to do maybe a slow pulse off and then on. And then if it's looped, it's going to continue doing that. I'm cool with that. It's just going to do a really slow pulse off and on. So the green LED will be lit up full, and the red LED will just be doing this pulse off and on while the other one stays on continuously. Like, hey, it's an option to turn it off. Now, when it's off, I do want it to blink. But for its first phase, I want it to be off. And we're going to say for we're going to say 10,000 milliseconds. We want it to be off, and then transition 10,000 milliseconds. And then next step, we want it to blink. Or actually, you know what? Next step, let's not do a next step. Let's go blink off then on. So it should be opposite of our other one, right? And we said we're going to run the other one, what, for 100,000 and 10,000 transition. And it's looped. Let's see what that one's going to look like. So here it is. We're off. Now we're going to throw the power to her. And this is what that red LED is going to do. It's going to be like, hey, I'm available. I'm here. If you want to shut me off. We can probably control the pace of that fade, I would guess. Slow pulse. Well, I'll have to look at it. At any rate, let's get that style code. Don't think too much about this. It's all brand new. I don't know how to do this. We're learning it together. And I'm going to paste this style code in. Bam. There we go. And there it is. Now that's the end of that preset, which that was, what did we say that was? Rogue One Vader. So now I'm going to go, I call that one Vader. Oop, we want lowercase here. Vader. And then we're going to end that config. Bam, bam. Next, new preset. What does he want after Rogue One Vader? He wants the balance. So we're going to go balance, common, and then common tracks. And he didn't really specify. I'll probably put my lightning blade with this one, I guess. Common tracks, and we'll put lightning wave. It's not very, it won't be very Star Warsy, but you know, whatever. And then for a blade style for that, I want my lightning blade. All right. So I found one, Star Killer RGB config. So we're gonna open that and found me a lightning blade, which is right there. That's a cool blade. And I always put lightning blade with balance. I have no idea why. It's just a traditional thing, I guess. I don't even know if Andy Paul wants this blade, but you know, he's gonna get it, right? So there you go, Andy. You can see this is a lot shorter. This is an older blade style. And I'm just gonna put our normal Jedi blinkies with this one. So I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom of the config. I'm going to copy these two blade styles here. So I'm just highlighting, hitting copy. Oh, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to copy, not cut. Copy. And we're going to come up here and we're going to paste these underneath balance. Paste. And then quote lightning blade. And then end preset next. Next he wants Ben. So new preset with that bracket, and then open parentheses. Ben common quote comma quote common tracks. I'll call this the Ben wave. I don't even know what that's going to be, but we'll figure it out. And then I know that, you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi's blade is probably going to be pretty much the same as what we said for what, ESB. So here's the cool part. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy ESB. You know, if he doesn't like it, he can just change the color. I'm going to just copy that blade style from ESB, copy, and I'm going to use that for Ben, which is the one we're currently writing. Here we go, Ben. So here's that blade style there. I'm going to paste, and then enter, and that's Obi-Wan Kenobi's a Jedi, so we're just going to use our, you know, our hero sequence for the other two blades. So I'm going to copy the other two blades, the blink sequence, the simple blink sequence that we got from open source Sabers at the very beginning of the video. And I'm going to use that simple blink sequence as the second two blades on Ben. Paste, enter, and then we're going to call this Kenobi! Kenobi! End preset. Next preset. What do you want? What are these? The Eternal Twins fonts by Sith and Kyberphonics. So I'll call this Twin, oops, sorry, Twin 1. Oh, sorry, we need common quote comma, and then common tracks Twin 1 dot wave, whatever that's going to be. And I don't even know what color they are, so I'm going to have to call Andy. And then we're going to make another preset with Twin 2 common comma common tracks Twin 2 wave comma. And that's going to be that. So I'm going to have to get up with Andy and find out what these are, and we'll come back and we'll fill in these last two presets. And I'll probably throw a couple of rainbow blades on here because we've got to have that on our Proffie saber. So y'all stand by. All right, so I just talked with Andy on the internet, and you know, this is his saber, and he says both these blades are yellow. So let's go get some yellow blades from Fett's website. So I'm gonna, you know, you'd think I would bookmark this as much as I've been there, but you know, whatever. You guys get to see how I go there. Let's go to the style library, and let's go to a rotoscope style. And let's go, we're going to go rotoscope sequels. main blade. And our main blade, he says, is yellow. And he's, of course he can mess around with the colors and make it whatever he wants, but let's look at yellow. And let's scroll down here. Preon, leaving all that crap alone. Let's go spark tip ignition. Next one, standard ignition. And then let's go cycle up. Default ignition time, we're going to go with 500 milliseconds. No power-up options. Retract effects, nah. Cooldown, nah. Post off, nah. Clash. We're going to leave these white. I think I'm going to leave these white. And you can change those in edit mode, but I'm going to leave them as white here. Stab. Normal stab. Yada. No force boost, no base flare, no rain effects. Looks good. Let's get the style code. I agree. Okay. And we're going to paste this blade style into both of those presets. And, Andy can change them to whatever he wants. So we're going to paste there. And then we're going to come to this next preset. And, oops, we need some space there. And we're going to paste it here too. Paste. So now we got those twins blade styles. We're going to grab our blinkies, which is our second two blades, because every preset has to have 3 blade styles, because we've specified that our saber has 3 blades. So every preset has to have 3 blade styles. There's the first or the second twin. This should be the first one, right? Yep, twin 1. All right, so now we need paste, and then this is going to be twin 1, end preset, comma, and this is twin 2, paste, quote, twin 2, end preset, comma, and those are all of Andy's presets. I'll probably add some other bonus stuff for him here, but you can see how big that config file got in very quick order. And this is an OS 6 compliant config file. We're going to be running edit mode and everything else on this. So these blades are, pretty powerful things. So, you can take a simple config file like we started with in the configurator on Frederick's proffieboard page, and, we add these different defines, and then we start adding these blade styles, these very, very highly custom blade styles. You can basically, there's no limit. It's like Fernando says, it's unlimited power. You can do whatever you want. And we've done a lot here on this simple little config file for Andy's saber, and you can do even more. You can do a lot more than I've done here. Andy's saber is a fairly simple saber with the main blade and blinkies, and 2 blinkies. And those are the 3 blades. You've got the main neopixel blade, and you have the, so here where it says number of blades 3, we've got our neopixel blade, and we've got our red LED and our green LED. And, when you scroll down here, this is our main blade on our first preset. And then there's our 2 blinkies. This is the green LED, this is the red LED. And then that's the end of the preset. So that is one config file written. Next, in the next part, this is going to be part 3. We're going to actually author the SD card to match this config file and be OS 6 compliant. Come along for the ride.
All right, everyone, so we've set up our computer to program Proffies. We've created our config file. Now we need to create our SD card. So this is the lightsaber I'm working on, and you can see I've got a folder here called SD contents, but it's empty. So what we're going to work on in the next to last chapter of this video is creating this SD card. Now I'm going to start with, the first thing we need to do is go get the common folder, and we're going to go to Google again. We're going to Google proffieboard, and we're going to go to the proffieboard V2 page. Again, I'll link all these pages in the doobly-doo that we've gone to here down in the expanded comments. And we want to go to the software page, and I'll tell you why. In the very beginning of the video, I skipped over this section where it says, hey, you need some sound fonts, tracks, and or voice packs. You got to click here. Now this is the free prop sound section. This is where we get the common folder, and the common folder is going to include all the voice packs for OS 6.7. Now the cool part is here you can play the track here, and then you can download it here. So that's what all these are. These are the voice packs. So like when you're on the free sounds page, or on the free prop sounds page, and you scroll down, number one, you also have those fonts where you can download the default SD card files. We're not using any default SD card file sounds on this lightsaber, but we do need the voice pack for edit mode. And you can listen to these to see what they sound like.
Main menu. Main menu.
Main menu.
Main menu. Main menu.
Main menu.
I'm going to use this one. Andy can change it on his own if he wants. I'm going to put the woman's voice because you can hear it usually over the saber fonts, which is why I prefer to have that. So you can see it's downloaded down here. So I'm going to, let's see it in a folder so I can minimize this window. And I'm going to go ahead and extract it here. And then you'll see. So it's going to extract it in that download folder. And here it is. And look what we got, common folder. The common folder is I'm going to move it over here into our SD card. So basically what I'm doing is I'm writing my SD card contents on the computer before I actually write the SD card. But this common folder contains all the voice files.
The battery level is
For the female voice,
choreography begin.
which is pretty cool. So you have all the voice prompts that are needed by OS 6.7. These were created by Brian Connor in multiple languages and multiple voices. That's very cool. Now, also on this common folder, we're also going to add a new folder in this folder because of the way I write my config file. This isn't the only way to do it. This is just the way I do it. But I put my tracks folder in my common folder. Now in tracks, I'm going to go to my music tracks, and because OS 6.7 has a wave player on it, I'm just going to import everything I own. Everything I own is going to go in this folder. So this is our SD card. We got our common folder, and our common folder is having stuff downloaded into it in the background while we're working on it. So it's cool just to let this go. So you can see it's downloading all these things. We're good. We're good. Okay. Back to our SD contents. We've got our common folder. Now, let's pull up Andy's config file that we've been working on the whole video. and I usually make sure that I write the SD while I have the config pulled up. Now you can see our first preset that we need. I'll show you, we're back in his config file here. There's the config top. There's the, where we've defined the prop file we're using, which is Fernando's. And then we're going to scroll on down and through the presets. And we get to our first preset, which starts here, ESB. So I know I have a folder named common. There it is. Now I need a folder called ESB. So I'm going to create a new folder called ESB. And there we go. Now, I know that I have that in Sabers, Proffie fonts, ESB Graphics, there it is. That should be Kyberphonics. And I'm going to grab all these, and I'm going to copy, and I'm going to paste them into this folder. And again, they're going to be downloading from the cloud, so you can see I've got a bunch of items that are coming down from the cloud, and now you've got this ESB Graphics, which is coming down. So I'm going to go up, because we're going to begin working on the next one while all this is happening in the background. So let's get to his next preset. His next preset is Luke Jedi. All right, so we made our Luke Jedi folder, and I'm going to go up into Andy's folder that I've created here for his lightsaber. And here's the sound font. This is KSYS Luke ROTJ, which Andy Paul has owned this for years. You can see Andy's other commission on my YouTube channel, and we're going to copy that, and we're going to go back into SD contents, back into this folder, and I'm going to copy all the sound font into there, just like that. And now he's got Luke Return of the Jedi in there. All right, next preset. I could just say and so on and so forth, right? Let's go to the next preset. Next preset is Vader. So I'm going to create a new folder. You don't have to create these new folders, but the reason I do it is because it's a safety measure. And I'll show you here in a minute. It's not going to be on this Vader font because I've already cured these Vader. I've already cured these things. So there's the contents of Vader. And I'm going to copy all that stuff. Copy. I'm going to go up back into his SD contents, Vader, and it's empty. And here we go. We're going to paste all the contents of Vader in there. So now we got Vader. So while we're doing this, we're going to let's scroll down to the next preset. But next preset. Oh yeah, it's because I did those sequences. Next preset is going to be balance. So if I go to Proffie fonts, and let's say I go to ANH V2. So this is Kyberphonics, a New Hope training V2. And when you download these off their websites, a lot of people just would think, oh, I'm just going to drag this folder over here into the SD card. No, because if you drag this whole folder over, you still don't have the sound font as your first. The sound font's got to be first. So number one, there's two different fonts on this after you get through all these subfolders. You got ANH Graphics, which is, without the Probe Droid blaster sounds. And then you have ANH Training, which has the, the Training Droid blaster sounds. But then even when you click on that, you want it for CFX, Proffie, or Verso. And it's only when you click on this ANH Training on Proffie, bam, there's the sound files that are ANH Training. So, look how many subfolders. 1, 2, 3. So there's 3 subfolders. You can't have that. So when you open the sound font, the first thing you see has to be the sounds that comprise the font. It cannot be subfolders. Now it can be subfolders like this, like subfolders that have the sounds in them, the sounds in there. And these subfolders that contain the sounds are fine. But if you have subfolders that don't contain sounds, that's not fine. Then, you boot up your Saber and nothing happens. But you can have the raw sounds, or you can have folders that are labeled for the raw sounds. Some of these fonts are older and don't have the subfolders. They actually work quicker if you do have the subfolders, like Kyberphonics ESB with the subfolders there. It just tends to work a lot better. And, I just wanted to show everybody that. We talked about, the subfolders and what the fonts look like when you download them. I'm going to take this time to just, Google Sith, and you got Sith Saber fonts, and this is Sith's website, ksithsaberfonts.com, and he's got all these sound fonts that are awesome that you can download. And the reason that you'll always hear me pushing Sith, I ought to get a Sith sweatshirt. I'm gonna have to do that, like that one. I want that sweatshirt. And I'm going to give a shout out to Sith because he's like the OG for open source sound fonts, and I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out in this video. Google and Kyberphonics fonts. Kyberphonicfonts.com is Jesse's website where you can download these sound fonts. And look, guys, these sound fonts cost money. Each of these sound fonts, you guys see all the sounds they contain, and when you're ordering a sound font from Jesse or Sith, you can guarantee that a lot of work is going into them. So this little bit of work you see me doing here, is taking advantage of that work. I paid for that work. I pay money for the work, and Andy already owns the fonts that are on here. With the exception of Ben that I had to download from Kyberphonics, and I paid for it, and for Andy, and then Andy's going to reimburse me, and the Eternal the twins that I had to order from Sith, and Andy paid for those, but Andy owns all these other fonts on this Saber. Pay these font makers; they're making really cool stuff. Sith stuck his neck out on the line back when smoothswing was in its early development. And Sith is the OG behind, writing smoothswing sounds. All the rest of us were just a bunch of Saber nerds and didn't really do it. Sith was a sound guy. He came in there and basically made the first real smoothswing sound font. He had a smooth Jedi and a smooth Sith and then a smooth crossguard. And the smooth crossguard turned out to be Sith crossguard eventually, which I think was the first majorly effective sound font for smoothswing. So it took a lot of work, many hours and hours of dedication go into the authoring of each of these. So make sure you're paying your font makers. That's the end of my commercial for the prop makers, for the sound file guys. I think what they do is incredible, and it's pretty awesome that we have these two font makers that really help be the OGs for sound fonts in the open source world. Now you got a bunch of other font makers too out there. Fonts by Fours, I'm not forgetting about you, brother. You got a bunch of sound makers that make cool sounds, and make sure that you're helping them out too. You buy cheap Chinese sabers, Lord only knows where they got the fonts. They probably stole them. You're not paying these guys. Get your fonts, upload them to your OS 6.7 Saber. Let's get back to work. All right, we need to balance. So I guess I need to go into my SD contents folder and create a new folder for the balance. B-A-L-A-N-C-E, balance. I like that movie. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Who knows what I'm talking about? With B-A-L-A-N-C-E, balance. You smell like a dung heap. Back to my SD contents. I'm going to open our empty folder balance, and we're going to paste all these balance sounds into the balance folder.
Let's make sure we got accent swings when we do. That's awesome sauce. Then we go. All right, so let's scroll down on our config to our next twin one. Oh, Lord. So we need to create a new folder. We're going to call this twin one. And we're going to scroll up because I believe this is the Eternal Twins and Arcan. And we need it for Proffie. And we're going to copy all these. Copy. And we're going to put that in. So remember, Arcan was twin one. So we're going to go into SD contents and we're going to go twin one. We're going to paste all them. So there's twin one. Bam! And then we need a folder called twin two. Twin two. And we're going to go back up to the Sith Eternal Twins. And then we're going to go to Thexan. By the way, Sith and Kyberphonics worked on this one together. And we need the sound font for Proffie. And there we go. So he's going to be twin two. That Thexan is going to be twin two. I just call them twin one and twin two in the config. So I try to make the sound fonts, kind of easy to remember. So I know what they are. Eternal Twins, twin one, twin two. If I'd have named them Thexan and Arcan, I'd be like, what the hell is that? Which is just me. I mean, y'all can name them whatever you want. The key thing about naming is just to make sure whatever you have in your config file matches what this folder says. Because if this folder was in capital letters, twin one, it wouldn't work. It's case sensitive, it's letter sensitive, it needs to be exactly the same. All right, so we know we got twin one and twin two, and yeah, I still have to make twin one wave and twin two wave. We'll get to that later. Twin two, and next is cross guard. So next we need cross guard. So I'm going to go. I thought Ben Kenobi. I must not have done. I might need to go do a cross guard, and that folder's empty right now. But we're going to go get cross. Here it is. I'm going to grab all this. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to go to our SD contents. See, when I'm done with all this, I'll just be able to write this folder, this SD contents folder, right onto his SD card. And I'll format the SD card first, and then we'll write these on there. We still got a lot of work to do before we can do that. One that I must have skipped it. So let's add that bin font. We're going to get a new folder. And we're going to write bin. I use lowercase letters so I don't get confused. You can see it's bin there. And let's go up, and so now we got our bin file here, which is in Andy's folder. We're going to copy all these. Copy. Then we're going to go into Andy's, I'm sorry, I'm still in Andy's MHS. Let's go to this SD contents. And did I make a bin folder? I did. Should be empty. Not anymore. First. I'm still not used to Windows 11, those icons for paste and cut and all that crap. I'll get it. It is what it is. Oh crap, it's got a low battery sound on it. I wonder what the low battery wave is on this thing. Low battery. It's got to be better than Frederick. Low battery. Oh, bro. Can you imagine that at 3 o'clock in the morning? Oof, Jesus. That might not be a good idea. But at any rate, we got Ben on there. All right, so we've loaded all the sound fonts onto our SD card,
and we've got a couple other steps remaining. So the config we've been working on is called apaulmhs_config.h. I'm going to close this because I've actually been working on it where we're eventually going to have to save it, which I'm kind of putting the cart before the horse, but I'm going to copy, there it is. I'm going to copy that config file and I'm going to paste it over here on our SD card. Good saber installers and companies, reputable companies that are installing Proffie sabers, they've got to be putting that config file on the SD card. If they're not, they're ripping you off. There's no way, you should be starting from scratch making your own config file. All these Chinese companies that are selling you cheap lightsabers, y'all need to start a system. They put that config file on the SD card. If they don't, stop buying sabers from them. Because basically you're going to turn that thing into a $150, $200 brick. You try programming it, you don't know how it's wired. So they need to send you the config files it was sent with. I send them with all my sabers. They should too. It's just good business. So there is his config file, which will also go on his SD card. Now, we got some nonsense to sort out with tracks. The way the track player works in OS 6, if you have tracks other than in your tracks folder, they can get played 2 or 3 times. It could throw OS 6 for a loop. So a lot of these font makers, they put tracks in their folders, and so I go through each font to make sure there's no tracks in these folders that I don't want. I know that I think there's some on ESB tracks. So this is Luke Skywalker. I wonder if I have that already. No, but I'm going to rename this. I'm just going to call this ESB. I have ESB end credits. I'm going to call this one ESB. And I'm going to drop that over here. And then I'm going to delete this tracks folder from the ESB font and cut that out of there. All right. So now this ESB track that I just glued over here, this is, I keep all the tracks over here. I'm going to put it in our common folder tracks because we need an ESB wave. Bam. Now we got one. Alright, so we've cleaned up balance bin, ESB, now we're going to cross. I don't think there's any tracks on it in there. It doesn't look like there are, so we're solid there. Now let's go to Luke Jedi. I don't think there's any tracks on it. We're good there. Seismic, I don't think there's any tracks. Oh, there is a tracks folder. And it's empty. Delete that folder. I don't want that. Those tracks folders could throw OS 6 for a loop. I can't remember what they did, but Alright, so that was seismic. Alright, seismic. We got rid of the tracks folder on. Yeah. Now, twin 1. There's tracks for twin 1. We needed this anyway. We're going to call that twin 1 wave. There. Twin 1, twin 1A, twin 1B, twin 1C, twin 1D. Now, I'm going to copy all these all over to my tracks folder. Copy. I'm going to paste.
So I keep a tracks folder on my desktop, so I'm putting all these in my tracks folder. And now I have to put these in Andy's common folder, tracks folder. So we got a twin 1 track. If you remember, you know, in our config file, we had twin 1 wave and twin 2 wave. So hang on a minute, I'll show you, because we still got to work in this config file. You guys can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to open up Andrew Paul's config file that we're working on here, the SD card. So you can see for the ESB, we needed ESB wave, and scroll up here because they're in alphabetical order. And we have an ESB wave. And then if we scroll to a second preset, we need a Java wave. Scroll down here, we should have a Java wave. I'm pretty sure that we do. Java wave. On Luke Jedi, we need a track called Java wave, and on Andy's SD, we have in his common tracks folder, we have a Java wave. So we know we're good on that preset. Let's scroll down below to the next one. Vader, we need Hall wave. We've got Hall wave on Andy's SD, so we're good there. Sequence, sequence. Next is balance, and we need lightning wave. Let's see if we have lightning wave on here. Yep, we've got lightning wave. And then next is bin, and we need a bin wave, and I don't think I have a bin wave. All right, I think I found a wave that's going to work, and it's the force wave. And this to me sounds like Kenobi. You know, I love that. So instead of it being bin wave, I'm just going to go ahead and call this force wave, because we already have a wave on the SD card that matches force wave. So I'm going to just rename it in the config, and then I'm going to save the config file. I have to remember to save a copy of that too. And let's scroll down to the next one. Then that's the main blade style, and then the two blinkies. Twin 1, we have our twin 1 and twin 2 waves, I thought. We have twin 1 wave right there. And so now we're going to scroll down. And we do not have a twin 2 wave. Sacks. Twins 1B. So we're just going to call this Twins 1B font. Come back in. All right, so now we're down to Kylo Wave, which is our next font, which is crossguard. So I'm going to scroll up here and make sure we got a Kylo Wave, which we should. We do. There you go. So we got our Kylo Wave for crossguard. Balance. Cantina Wave. This is our rainbow blade, so we do have a Cantina 1 wave. That's correct. And crossguard, Cantina 2. This is our fire rainbow. And sequence, sequence, and seismic, fat wave, fat wave. I'm pretty sure that's it. That is it. So let me save my config file. And now we're going to go up here. So we're back at a raw SD card contents that we've been working on all day. And I've just modified this config file, so I'm going to copy it. I'm going to bring it over here and paste, so the most up-to-date version is on the SD card. Place the file on destination, yes. All right, so that's pretty solid.
That's a solid SD card right there. I think we're ready to rock and roll. So what's going to happen next is I'm going to remove the SD card from this lightsaber, and we're going to program the SD card, and then I'm going to program the lightsaber with our config file, and I'm going to record all of that. But this is the end of chapter 3, programming your SD card. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pull this over. You know, when you get your SD cards, you know, you should make a copy of all the files that are on it because they could come in handy. That's how this folder started. My music tracks and also my sabers with my Proffie fonts and Plector fonts and everything else. You know, you never know what you're going to need. So make copies of everything that's on the SD card when you buy it from wherever you're buying it from. And, you know, here's the SD card, APOL MHS. And you can see right now it's got that stuff on it. But I'm getting ready to, I just did that so I made sure the saber works when I programmed it. But now we're going to format this, and we're going to format 8-ball MHS format. You can use a normal formatter, but so far for me, the Windows formatters work. It's going to erase all the data on the disk. That's why you need to make a copy of it before you format it. Okay, and then close out of that. Now, this is the window that we've been working on the whole time, where we've been making all the fonts and font folders to match exactly what's in our config file. Right now, I'm going to copy all of these files. I'm going to highlight them, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go, I want to see more options. I want them to send this to APOL MHSD. So right now it's writing all those files that we've been working on for the last part of this video over onto the SD card. This is going to finalize our SD card. This is the end of that portion of the build. We altered time, sped up the harvest, and teleported us off this rock. Welcome back. SD card is programmed. Bada bing. There she goes. So now the SD card is programmed. Well, it's not giving me an eject option. Before it was. Maybe I need a bigger window. There it is. All right. So there's my SD card. So I want to eject my SD card. And you heard it play a little sound, so I can now eject my SD card, which I did. And I'm going to put this in the lightsaber. And next, we'll get into the chapter 4 of programming your Proffie saber. Okay, everybody. I'm going to minimize this. We'll come back to that in a minute. We're getting ready to program the saber. But what I want to do is let's go into the config file that we've been working on. So I'm going to open Andy's MHS folder, and we're going to look at the SD contents, and let's maximize this right now. There you can see 10/27/22 at 2:26 p.m. is my most recent config file. And I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy that config file. And now we're getting ready to program our lightsaber. So on chapter 1, we upgraded our computer and we inserted this OS system in this folder called 6.7. I'm going to open up this 6.7, and then I'm going to open up this folder called Proffie OS. Once I open that folder, I have a folder called config. I'm going to paste, so I'm going to right click and paste this into my config folder, and this is our config file that we made. Now it was already in there, that's why I got an alert, hey, do you want to overwrite the existing file? And yes, I did, because it was already in there. So the name of this is APOL MHS _config.h. So now that that's in the config folder, we are ready to program this lightsaber. So I'm going to back all the way out, and I'm going to open up 6.7 and Proffie OS. Now I'm going to scroll down until I see Proffie OS Eno. Now I have my file types exposed, and how you can do that is view or show file name extensions, and then you'll see the file name extensions as well on Windows. But this Proffie OS Eno, that's the Proffie OS 6.7 within Arduino, so it's basically the Proffie OS. So we're getting ready to open up the Proffie OS. And here it is. This is the Proffie OS that you see on the screen. And right here, when we scroll down very early on, you see all these define config file, define config file, define config file, etc. Now we get to the very bottom, we're going to pretend that this wasn't there, and we're going to write a new one, config.h quote. So these two slash marks, the forward slashes that are before all these define config files, that is telling Arduino to ignore that. Number one, you need to make sure that all of these have two forward slashes in front of it, because whichever config file you write here that doesn't have the slashes in front of it, that's the one that Arduino that's the config file Arduino is going to write to your lightsaber. So define config underscore file quote config forward slash, there, misspelled config, probably because it's stupid update thing popped up, config forward slash. Then the config is the folder that it's in. Now we're going to name it. So it was apol mhs underscore config.h. Pretty sure that was the name of our config file right there. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an error in it. I'm going to actually purposely put a typo in it so that it doesn't work. So let's go into the config folder, apol mhs underscore config.h, and on my first preset I'm going to omit a comma, and it's going to cause a problem. This comma that's after the wave, I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and that's going to cause a problem. And now I'm going to save it because I purposely want this to give us an error, because I want you guys to see an error. All right, so now I'm going to open up Arduino. Now I can check the config to make sure it's going to compile by hitting this check mark, and it's going to check it. And I want you to see this error, because we're going to get an error here because I just deliberately put a typo. So you can see it's coming up with all kinds of problems, but if you scroll up to the top of the problems, it says there's an unexpected bracket before style Peter, so something's wrong before our first style. Now it knows that something's wrong, and I think it's in line 64. You get this kind of thing, you're missing a comma, you're missing a parentheses, but you want to go up to the very beginning, and it should be in line 64 of the config file. So let's minimize this, and we'll go back into the config file, and we'll put that comma back in it. apol mhs underscore config.h. Let's scroll down to that first preset, and we're going to put that comma behind there, and I bet this fixes all of that. Now you have to make sure you save it back again, because remember, we purposely put that error in there to see what's going on. So now let's try to compile that. Let's check it again. Hopefully now that we fixed that error, it should be good to go. I hope. Could have made some other typos while we were doing all that editing while making this video. I mean, if this thing compiles, you know, I did a pretty good job. Usually you're going to make some typos, you're going to miss a comma, you're going to miss a quotation mark, you're going to miss an opening bracket, a closing bracket, a comma behind a blade style, you're going to miss something. That's not that unusual. Bam, compiled. Uses 92% of the storage space. Here, I'm going to put us up here picture in picture because I want you guys to see. I'm getting ready to plug in and program this lightsaber over here. So I need a cord around my neck. And I'm going to go ahead and plug in. I'm going to go ahead and plug in to my computer, and I'm hoping you're going to hear the Proffie board get recognized here. So my Proffie board got recognized. So I just wanted you guys to see plugging into this computer, but I'm going to minimize that now so you guys can see what's going on here. So now that my Proffie board is plugged in, if we've set everything up, because you paid attention in chapter 1, now I'm going to go down here and I have to define which Proffie board I have. If you have a Proffie board V1, you're going to select Proffie board. If you have Proffie board 2.2, you're going to select that. If you have a Proffie board 3, which is only 10 of them, I have one of them, you're going to select that. But we have a Proffie board 2.2, so we're going to select Proffie board V2. Now, I do want serial and USB, web USB. That way the owner can edit the saber via web USB. Port is COM9 Proffie board, and we're good to go. I'm getting ready to upload our brand new config file to this lightsaber that we've been working on for quite a while, and we're going to see if this thing works. So hopefully we're going to hear a boot out of this thing once it finishes uploading. I'll bring you guys a picture of the saber back on once we're uploading, but I want you all to see what the upload process looks like. So it's now programming. You can see 16, 17, 19. You can see these equal signs growing. This is how you know it's programming. If you ever get a countdown like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it's not uploading. So I know this config file is uploading to our lightsaber. It's such a beautiful thing. I'm so excited. This is actually the final bit of work that needed to happen to Andrew Paul's saber to get it going. And I'm going to go ahead and bring the picture-in-picture up. You can still see the program progress down at the bottom. And what should happen is when it's done programming, you should see these blinkies come on. Which, let me turn that light off so you can see those blinkies go. And you should hear the boot sound when this saber lights up. 75, 77, 78, 80. I'm so excited. Andrew Paul's lightsaber is almost done. And you guys have been able to sit here and watch it all happen in this video from beginning to end, including setting up my new computer. That speaker was actually resting on something. That's why you heard something weird. But you see the lights going? That's awesome sauce. Let's pull out the cord and stow the board back where it's supposed to be. You can see there is, my install of this saber, which y'all saw me install this saber live too. So I mean, this lightsaber's got such a history to it on my channel because the whole install video for this lightsaber is on there, and now this 2022-2023 Proffie programming guide is going to be on there too. So I'm getting something there's there's a piece of lint in the threads. Let's try this again. There we go. All right, so this is ESB, and now let's go ahead and put a blade in here. I'm going to have to move that blade retention out of the way. Let's try to ignite this puppy. Motions work. Stab. See the lights doing their thing. Swing works. Twist works. And let's check the buttons. There's our lockup. Blasters. We have to increase the clash threshold.
Luke Skywalker.
Return of the Jedi.
Luke Skywalker.
Not sure what happened there. But you can see, there's our fade one. This is the one we wrote. You can see this one fading out. Watch, fade, 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 fade. And then when we turn it off, they're blinky, 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 blinky. Now that's supposed to be Darth Vader. I'm not sure why that's showing Luke Skywalker on there. Might figure that out. Next preset.
The valleys.
Lightning blade.
It's just Ben these days.
That's the one Andy told me I'm gonna love.
Prince Arkham.
Twin 1. Twin 2.
Kylo Ren.
Crossfed.
On directory not found. The valleys. Kylo Ren. Seismic charges.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker.
Let's go find out why I put Luke Jedi on the Vader config. Maybe I did a typo or something when we were working on stuff, so, you know. We'll go check and see what went wrong there, but you get the basic gist. Everything else we did worked, and there was also a font missing right after balance. But I'll work on all that and fix it. That's the joys of doing a saber. So, you know, we'll get going. Hey, you guys are still here?
The Force is with you, young
Where we had, but it didn't have the Darth Vader
Luke
font.
Skywalker.
We got the Darth Vader font now. Look at those blinkies. See that red fading? That red? See it fading? We're going to put this thing in a lockup. Look at the, they both go kind of nuts. That's awesome. We wrote that together. You and I. Go write your own. Thank you for coming along for the ride. Can't believe y'all stayed all this time. Thank you everybody for watching as usual. I really appreciate y'all tuning in on my channel. And as always,